Quite frankly, one of the things that saddens and frustrates me deeply is for people, African-American people, who benefit from the civil rights movement, yet disrespects the civil rights movement and its leaders. That really gets under my skin. And it should get under your skin as well, because while we got white people attacking the civil rights movement from the right, you have African-American people who are attacking it from the left. On both sides, it's being pummeled. And so I've been doing videos to try and educate and reconnect the African-American community with the civil rights movement and all the gains that we got from the civil rights movement. That effort we call the Civil Rights Academy. And we're reading from an ebook that we created, just to briefly remind you, African-American people, how different your life would be right now without the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act, and many other civil rights laws. And all of that arose from the civil rights movement. Now, of course, we want even more progress. We should demand even more rights, even more racial justice, because we haven't gotten there yet. And some of you young people, I love, as Dr. King said, this marvelous new militancy that we see in our young people. That is a wonderful thing. But don't let anyone cause you to disrespect the very movement that gives you the rights that you enjoy now. So this is another video in the Civil Rights Academy. Today, we're going to look at the civil rights movement itself. Very briefly, I'm just going to read a few paragraphs. And at the end of it, again, I'm going to play a clip from another video of some young people who have developed a new civil rights movement. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Because we're living in that day. You know what's coming, January 20th, 2025. It is an anti-civil rights movement. And we cannot be dissing the old civil rights movement, especially because we benefited greatly from it. We today enjoy many, many benefits from that old civil rights movement, and we got to protect it. So stay with me. I'm going to read some from this ebook and then play a clip about this young African-American woman, brilliant young woman, who is out here in these streets fighting for civil rights. Stay with me. Hello, everybody. I'm civil rights attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. Each and every week, we bring you one legal analysis of some story trending regarding politics, policies, personalities, or pop culture to empower you with the information you need to defy this unjust legal system and to nullify systemic racism. If that interests you, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell so you'll get notified every time we upload one of these powerful and informative videos. And speaking of civil rights, go over to Amazon.com and grab my book, Education and Justice, if you have an African-American son in public school. This book will show you the many ways that public schools mistreat our boys and what you can do to help your son, godson, grandson, nephew, whatever the case may be. So go over there and get your copy, and thank you for doing so. Now, let's go to another screen, and let's start reading from the ebook of the Civil Rights Academy. All right, so let's go. The Civil Rights Movement. The Civil Rights Movement of the 1950s and 60s played a critical role in pushing President Lyndon Baines Johnson and Congress to enact the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Mass demonstrations, such as the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, highlighted the urgency of addressing systemic discrimination. By the way, I attended the 20th year anniversary of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom in 1983. I was a college student, and I'm telling you, it was overwhelming. It was my honor to be at the 20th year anniversary of that meeting. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., John Lewis, and countless grassroots activists brought national attention to the widespread inequalities faced by African Americans. Never forget that March on Washington, if you listen closely to the speech, as well as the speech before that march, you'll see that that speech was much more than talking about a dream. That speech was about reparations, because he talked about the fact that they had come to Washington to cash a check. To cash a check. They were demanding that the government make the check good. So Dr. King said that check had bounced as far as black people are concerned. And so when he went to Washington in 1963, they went there to demand payment for that check. That was a reparations movement. All right, let's keep going. Televised events such as the brutal suppression of peaceful protesters in Birmingham and the murder of civil rights workers in Mississippi further galvanized public opinion. So we've all seen the videotape of those white supremacists releasing dogs on black folk who were out there protesting for their rights, who released those powerful water hoses on black people who were out protesting for their rights and getting hit upside the head and so on to protest against racial injustice. Now, many people will criticize Dr. King and John Lewis for doing this in a nonviolent fashion. And I get that. I can remember when I was a younger man in college, for me, it was all about Malcolm X and the fact that Malcolm X and the Black Panther Party stood up and were willing to fight violently if necessary, right? None of them were violent, but they said, hey, we have the right to be violent if we are being attacked and assaulted for rights that we shouldn't even have to fight for. So I was a huge supporter of Malcolm X. And I acknowledge that he still said a whole lot of things that were true. But over the years, I've come to understand that Dr. King's nonviolent approach was the best approach, because at that time, we simply did not have the armory. We didn't have the artillery to fight fire with fire. And so what he did, which is a Christian principle, he fought hate with love, and it worked. It moved the hearts of white America to pass those civil rights laws. Now, I'm not saying they were passed just because of the hearts of white people, because in many ways, the hearts of a lot of white people have never been changed, right? But it did move the hearts of the right people to pressure Lyndon Baines Johnson to sign those bills into law. So in hindsight, the nonviolent approach was the best approach. And if you got a problem with that, that's your prerogative. But as a Christian, I saw Jesus take a nonviolent approach, and his approach changed the world. And there are more changes to come from his nonviolent approach. So I completely and totally endorse the nonviolent approach. Although I do believe in self-defense, there is the Second Amendment. And as I've said many times, every law-abiding African-American person should be armed and informed. I recommend Dr. Carol Anderson's book, The Second, by the way. All right, so let's go back. These incidents created immense pressure on lawmakers to act. That's what I was just saying. President Johnson used this momentum combined with the legacy of President John F. Kennedy's commitment to civil rights to advocate for the act's passage. By framing civil rights as a moral and national issue, the civil rights movement forced Congress to confront long-standing injustices and pass the landmark legislation. That is so very powerful. Of course, our people could have gotten violent, right? But again, their firepower did not match the firepower of those white people. They just didn't. But anyway, I heard Andrew Young say on one occasion, he said, they were sitting around talking about what to do right after the church was bombed and the 4 young black girls were murdered. They were sitting around talking about what to do, if memory serves me correctly. And some guys in the group were ready to ditch Dr. King's nonviolent approach, and they were ready to pull out their arms. And I remember Ambassador Young saying that he asked some of those men, Charlie, what do you have? And Charlie said he had an old shotgun. and said, Tim, what do you have? And Tim said he had a .22 pistol. And William, what do you have? And William said he had a pitchfork. In other words, they didn't have the firepower to do this violently. And I'm telling you, violence wouldn't have been the way anyway. And so their nonviolent approach was the best approach, and it worked. It got laws passed that we still need today. We still live by today. And that's one of the reasons why it's so frustrating when people be dissing the civil rights movement, its tactics, its nonviolent tactics, as well as the leaders, when they themselves benefit from those laws. I mean, some of them are living in mansions, driving Mercedes, driving, 5-figure, 6-figure cars, while at the same time critiquing what Dr. King, the civil rights movement, Fannie Lou Hamer, who got beat almost within an inch of her life so that we could enjoy these rights. And yet you got some of these folks out here dissing the civil rights movement and its leaders. Come on. Stop that. Stop that. Don't help white people tear down civil rights laws. We still need them. We greatly need them. And that's what I'm going to talk about in the next video, the ongoing relevance of the act. I'm going to show you why the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, although they've gutted it, as well as the Fair Housing Act, still have a lot of relevance today. So that's going to be Thursday, in Thursday's video. So again, don't diss the Civil Rights Act. Don't diss the Civil Rights Movement. Don't diss civil rights, period. We still need them. Again, don't help whites attack the civil rights laws. Don't do that. Yes, of course, there's still work to be done. And that's why I'm going to show you this video now of this young woman who, during the George Floyd protests, was leading a movement that brought about some real change. I greatly admire this young woman, and I encourage more of you young people to do precisely what you see this young woman doing. All right, so let's go to that video. By the way, Merry Christmas. Have a very Merry Christmas. And remember, Jesus is always the reason for the season. All right, let's go watch that video.
Freedom Fighters DC is a group of like-minded individuals that are constantly fighting for the abolition of prison systems and police, and also continuing the fight for Black liberation.
Kerrigan and 6 others founded Freedom Fighters DC and have mobilized thousands into action, including this sit-in at the US Capitol days after Floyd's death. In a country hit by unexpected crisis, the group doesn't want to see a return to the old normal.
The system isn't meant to protect us, so organizing is starting from the ground up. So I think that that's different from the political power that we know today.
It starts with moments like these to talk to people. What does our future look like? Having a robust conversation about imagining new systems, a new world.